Good morning, everybody. I appreciate very much you joining me at 8 o'clock on this beautiful Tuesday morning. It's such fall weather outside. Um, I imagine we'll have some additional participants joining us, but in the interest of being good stewards of your time, let me go ahead and begin our pop-up tour presentation for our friends in Acadiana. So again, welcome. I know a couple of old friends on the call. Maggie Seymour, one of our board members. Hi, Maggie. And she is also the board liaison for the Acadiana Community Partnership Panel that I'll be talking about in a minute. And Dave Ernest, who's been on the board and continues to actively participate in the work of the Bar Foundation. If I can't see you, but it's great to know that you guys are out there. Also, welcome to members of representatives of some of the grantees of the Bar Foundation. Very nice to have you. Thank you for the good work you're doing. Uh, Let me begin by talking a little bit about our community partnership panel and specifically the panel in the Acadiana region. Around the state, there are 9 such panels comprised of volunteer members, and you see here that Shannon Dartez continues to serve as the chair of the CPP for Acadiana, and as I mentioned, Maggie is our board liaison. Uh, these panels are the eyes and ears of the foundation locally, and they supply us with really good ideas about where some needs might be that have not been met, and they make some recommendations to the grants committee and to the board about how some of the Jock Scott Community Partnership Panel funds ought to be used. If you are interested in serving on a community partnership panel, please reach out to Shannon or Maggie or Dave or any of the members of the panel, and I'm sure they'll be happy to introduce you to the panel, the work of the panel. It's a very good place to begin learning about the workings of the Bar Foundation and to begin your active participation in the work of the foundation. So my purpose this morning is to talk with you about why the Bar Foundation is good for our legal profession. And I want to share some personal history here and also to tell you that I hope at the end of this presentation, if you're not already inspired to become more active in the Bar Foundation, I hope that will be a result. And I also hope that you'll walk away from this presentation with a little more information, some things about the Bar Foundation that perhaps you did not know, that you ought to know. So my involvement with the Bar Foundation began several years ago when my friend Mike Patterson, who later became president of the State Bar Association, asked me to serve on the LBF Grants Committee. And I didn't know much about the Bar Foundation or its work at that point, but I was, in retrospect, very happy to have accepted Mike's invitation. It gave me an opportunity to learn an awful lot about the grantees and the work of the grantees, and more specifically, the work of the Legal Services Corporations. I got assigned to do grant review and follow up with all of the then existing LSCs, and I have to tell you that was a great learning experience for me. It made me more appreciative of the work the Bar Foundation does, and particularly the work that the grantee organizations do. So that's how I got started. There are lots of ways to get involved, and I hope you will search out one or more of those ways. We are never lacking for work to be done by good people who believe in the mission of the Bar Foundation and see the need for it. So during the course of the presentation, we're going to pause and I'm going to ask you to join in a little poll. And this is the first one. This one's pretty easy. Are you a fellow of the LBF? A fellow is someone who is a member, who makes a financial contribution every year. Lawyers, judges, and law professors are eligible. So if you're one of those folks, check yes. If you're not, check no. If you don't know for sure, check maybe. If you check no or maybe, we'd like you to follow up with us to make sure that we can count you in our number. So remember, you got to do these polls to get your CLE credit, if that's why you're here, and also to be eligible for our grand prize drawing after the presentation is concluded. So let me talk a little bit about our mission, and I want to talk about mission and programs and expenditures, and then I'm going to talk a little bit later about resources, and I'm going to share with you a couple of what I think are pretty compelling stories about successes, help that was received by very worthy recipients of civil legal aid who otherwise would not have benefited from the work that the foundation and its grantees do. The mission of the Louisiana Bar Foundation is pretty robust. You see it here. Essentially, it is to fulfill two objectives. One is to be the funder of civil legal aid in the state. So we compile, gather, marshal resources, and then within criteria that are established by both us and the Supreme Court, we award grants to organizations that uh, provide civil legal aid to their clients. And then also an equally important part of what we do is work to provide access to justice for everyone, regardless of their standing in life or economic standing. Uh, Part of that also is educating the public about what we do and the importance of what we do. So it is a robust mission. It is a mission that is not otherwise found in any other organizations. It's very different from the mission and the work that the public defender's offices do, for example. And we think, as I'm going to talk about in a minute, we think the network of providers that has been established through this organization enhances the value, enhances the resources available to the client community. So what do we do? Well, as the largest funder of civil legal aid, we want to make sure that we provide as much access to the legal support, legal counseling, legal representation for those who qualify as we can. And these are just some of the categories or some of the types of recipients of these services. The Bar Foundation doesn't provide any of these services directly to any of these recipients. All of our grantees, some of you on the call this morning know full well that how that works. The grantees engage these needy individuals within the scope of their capability and provide services to them. Good examples of those are the Shea Hope, for example. I know you're out there this morning. The Legal Services Corporation, Acadiana Legal Services. I know we have a representative on the call. The Lafayette Bar Foundation and Bar Association that has a robust pro bono program. All of those organizations ultimately touch the clients. Our role is to make resources available to them. And what we do ultimately goes to the very heart of the health, safety, security of these citizens and their families. And I want to talk a little bit more about that impact as we go through the presentation. So when I talk about civil legal aid, what I'm talking about is legal assistance provided to people who are in need of non-criminal civil representation, who meet our eligibility criteria, the individual grantee eligibility criteria. You all know that civil representation is not a fundamental right in almost every case. It's a very different arena than criminal cases where the Constitution requires us to provide representation. So this is not required and it's not always viewed as a governmental function. So we rely on external sources to provide resources, financing to people, to organizations to ultimately provide for the rendition of these services. At the end of the day, particularly given the scope of the representation we provide, our communities ultimately become a lot stronger. We've learned, painfully learned, that in disasters, the demand increases. I can remember following Hurricane Katrina in 2005, that almost immediately there were issues dealing with property titles and successions that had never been opened because, frankly, there had never been a need to do that. Well, when the Road Home program started, and one of the requirements was for the grant applicant under that program to prove that they owned the property that they wanted to repair, and they couldn't do that. Clearly, there was a need for services, and those people, as you might imagine, were the uninsured and those living below the poverty level. So the legal services organizations jumped in, and not only did they assist these people directly, but as a policy matter, assisted in getting legislation to make this process a little easier, so that if it ever happens again, we'll have the ability to respond more quickly and with less judicial involvement than perhaps we needed before. Today, eviction and rent landlord issues are hugely important. We also see that domestic violence cases increase as a function of people being confined in smaller spaces, restricted because of their employment status or just illness or some of the COVID restrictions. It also increases the vulnerability to our children, many of whom are not full-time in school again. And as a result of all of that, the economic stability of many families are in jeopardy. So particularly in times of disaster, we in the Bar Foundation like to work very closely with our grantees to make sure that we're putting adequate resources on these problems. Now I want to pause here and share with you a very moving story about a great success that one of our providers achieved for her client in a very unique set of circumstances. Take a moment and watch this video with me, if you will.
AJ, he's my sister's son. OCS had taken AJ away from her twice, actually. And she has her own mental illnesses and just really wasn't fit to raise him. When he pulled up his shirt, there were marks, bruises, like lashes all over him. I said, I have a 3-bedroom house. I have 3 children. Me and my husband been together 20 years. I want to try to get AJ. No criminal background. We can do this. Just as hard as Catherine fought, OCS was throwing every excuse in the world. When I tell you, Catherine fought like no other. It was hell. But we did it. She did it. Let me tell you, she did it. Now, when he was in that care, he would fight teachers, suspended every time he turned around. Since I've had him, he's never been suspended, never had a detention. His grades went from all Fs to Bs. It is extremely lovable. He loves to be hugged and held, and whatever will get you to smile makes him smile. He's here, and he knows that somebody loves him. So I'm not gonna turn my back on him. You're not going anywhere no more. You're here.
Every time I see that video, I wonder where AJ would be today if he had not been the recipient of Catherine's persistence over a period of 2 years to ensure that he got placed in a good and loving home. Just an example of the kind of success that our legal service providers achieve. And this goes on every day. So this is but one example of the kinds of good work and success that our legal services corporations and our other grantees achieve for their clients. I want to thank the Breon family for allowing us to share this video with you. Sort of makes the case, doesn't it? So I mentioned a few minutes ago that as a result of the groupings of grantees that receive monies through the Louisiana Bar Foundation, we've created a pretty robust network of civil legal aid providers. The groups that we partner with, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them by category and show you some examples of recipient grants in your region. But these folks are somewhat specialized, but unique in that they provide legal services to our poorest citizens, the most vulnerable among us, who truly would not otherwise have access to even the simplest legal advice, and certainly not always to the court system. As a result of the work of the foundation, I'm pleased to let everyone know that since 1989, we've had the pleasure of awarding grants totaling more than $94 million to various grantees around the state, all of whom provide this kind of service to their clients, our neighbors, other people in our community. So in the categories of grantees, this is sort of how we approach the world. Our grantees generally fall into one of the categories that you see here on the left-hand side of the slide. And they pretty much are self-explanatory. The legal services corporations, Acadiana and Southeast Louisiana, are generally responsible for half of the state geographically each. And that's pretty much tracks the population. They provide a broad range of legal services to their eligible clients. We see some of these other organizations that are a little more specialized, children legal services, certainly the domestic violence programs that are receiving additional attention, the pro bono projects that are often sponsored by a local bar association or bar foundation that make volunteer lawyers available to handle a variety of legal problems. Our loan repayment assistance program, these are grants to public service attorneys for the purpose of helping them retire their student loans. It's a very successful program, and it's one of the ways that we can as a foundation, encourage lawyers who are mission driven and have a desire to serve in this capacity. We just relieve some of the financial strain on them. Children in need of care funding. It's a state program. We actually receive a state appropriation to handle this program. This is at the request of the Louisiana Supreme Court. So we work with the Division of Administration for this is for the last couple of years to budget and receive an appropriation that then gets funneled to the legal services corporations. And these attorneys represent children who are about to be placed in foster care. So what you saw about AJ and moving and putting him in foster care, AJ would have had a lawyer appointed by the court, probably from a legal services corporation, to represent his interest in those proceedings. And then some special funding categories that kind of catch those who don't necessarily fit directly in one of these other categories. And our grants committee is organized by category here. So we have volunteers who serve on the grants committee and review applications for grants on an annual basis. So no grantee is guaranteed funding year to year. It's an earned and evaluated and awarded sum of money. But our grants committee members, particularly our subcommittees, get to be pretty good subject matter experts about the work of our grantees, and that enables us to be good stewards of limited resources. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, you will see a sampling of grants that directly benefited, directly impacted the Acadiana region. Some of those are fairly significant amounts of money, as you can see. And I mentioned Acadiana Legal Services Corporation, although they receive federal funding and funding from other sources for the Bar Foundation, they are the single largest recipients of grants of monies that come within our control. So impact on your communities, I don't think there's any question about that. And you can only speculate or imagine what would happen to the people who would go unserved, but for our ability to provide resources to these wonderful organizations. I had mentioned at the beginning of presentation of the community partnership panels. I would encourage you to inquire about participating at this level. It's a great way to directly influence monies to your area. These are some of the examples of community partnership panel grants. So we basically allocate money to each partnership panel, and we tell them within the confines of our criteria, identify places where something extra is needed, or there's something that a new need that needs to be met because of, for example, one of the natural disasters. And here you see where the Acadiana Community Partnership Panel recommended that its allocated money go. We at the Bar Foundation might not ever be aware of a specific need like this. And so the partnership panels really do give us an opportunity to directly influence in maybe a one-time or one-off way some peculiar need for Acadiana or one of the other 8 partnership panel regions. So please give Shannon a call. I promise you can call Maggie or Dave Ernest too, and they will help you get connected with the Acadiana Community Partnership Panel. Okay, time for poll number 2. So this one's pretty easy. We've got a prize. If the Apple AirPods, if you're interested in being eligible for the drawing, you say yes. If for some unknown reason you say no, then you say no. If you can't make up your mind, well, there's not much I can do for you. I would suggest you check yes, and that will satisfy the second polling requirement of our presentation today. And if you're the winner, we'll let you know by email right after the presentation. Okay, so I've been talking about structure and recipients and programs and the good work that our grantees do. Let me talk with you a little bit about where the money comes from and then kind of how it is put to use. And I want to share with you in the course of this discussion another success story about representation of someone in need of civil legal aid who had no other place to turn. And it's just another heartwarming example of the work that our grantees do as funded by the foundation. So the primary funding source for us is interest on lawyers' trust accounts. And y'all are all familiar with Rule 1.15 of the Rules of Professional Conduct. And that's where the Supreme Court set up the IOLTA program. And the interest on lawyers' trust accounts gets swept by participating banks and sent to the Bar Foundation. And we use it for the purposes designated by the Supreme Court, those things that are consistent with our mission. And that is the largest single source of money that we have. Now, it is heavily dependent on interest rates. The more interest that is paid on a trust account, the more interest goes to the Bar Foundation, the more money we have to support all of these worthwhile programs. Many of you know that the current interest rate is 0. We have a safe harbor rate, a floor rate that banks pay even when interest rates fall below the safe harbor amount. So we do continue to get interest on that money. It's just that the amount of interest is not as high as it would be, say, just as recently as pre-COVID-19. And then the world changed pretty suddenly when that happened for us. Children in Need of Care program, I've already mentioned, that's a state appropriation to us every year, several $1 million to support that program through the Legal Services Corporation. Cypre money, class action settlement money left over. You're in one of these cases and you want to suggest to the court that the Bar Foundation would be a good place for that money to go, we can make good use of that. Pro hoc vice fees, a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court amended the pro hoc rules to increase the amount of the application fee, and half of that money now goes to the Bar Foundation, and it is a fairly significant amount of money that we are able to use, again, to support our programs. Unidentified and unclaimed funds in a non-lawyer account world, this would be escheated funds. Money's in an account that can't be, where the owner can't be identified or the money goes unclaimed. So after a 2-year period, if a lawyer is holding such funds, the money is transmitted to the Bar Foundation instead of to the state treasurer. And then we handle that money much like the state escheatment program works. We can use the money with the obligation to return it to its rightful owner upon request. Number of foundations external to us that provide funding for us. And then last but certainly not least, over the last 2 years, the legislature has seen fit to appropriate $500,000 in each of those years just for general civil legal aid. Yeah, that was significant because for about 8 years, we were the only state in the nation where the legislature appropriated no money for that purpose. And the current administration and the members of the legislature, I think, saw that it was an appropriate way to provide some additional funding resources that we could then use to provide legal aid monies for our grantees. And we hope to continue that process with the administration and to increase the amount of money that is appropriated to us every year. What else impacts the work we do? Well, I probably don't have to tell you about the poverty population in Louisiana. If you look at these numbers, they're a little bit startling. If 1.8 million people in Louisiana are potentially eligible for free civil legal aid, and that threshold is not poverty level, it's ordinarily a multiplier of the federal poverty level. Out of a population of a little over 4 million people in Louisiana, that's a very significant percentage of our population that fall into this category. And of that number, nearly a quarter of a million live in the Acadiana region. So the work that our grantees are doing in Acadiana are touching a significant number of our fellow citizens who would otherwise not have access to our system of justice and certainly would not have access even to having their simple legal questions answered. And some of these problems are the only things that resolution of them is the only thing that stands between the ability of the family to stay together, remain economically viable. And then I'm going to talk with you in just a minute about economic impact and how that benefits everyone. So the poverty population in the state, the population that is eligible to receive these services is significant. And my expectation is that the percentage is going to grow when we see the 2020 census numbers, which only increases the need for us to be able to fund these services. So what is the economic impact, if any? Certainly we can all agree that there is a moral impact on our communities. The things that we do are good things. The things that our grantees do, the services that they provide, they're good things for our community. They help people. But in telling the whole story, there's also a direct financial economic impact to the expenditure of money to provide civil legal aid. Study we commissioned in 2018 that we recently updated made the case for us here. So you can see here that for every dollar that we invest in a grantee who provides civil legal aid, the economy, the state, the communities receive over $9 in immediate and long-term benefits. Some of this could be diminished reliance on governmental programs. It could be continued employment and the taxes that an employee pays on their income, sales tax and the like. But if you see the return on this investment, it is not only moral, but it is also economic. And this kind of information really did resonate with the members of the legislature when we approached them about providing in the general appropriations bill some small amount, relatively small amount of money to support civil legal aid. So when you're asked about why would I do this? Why would I contribute to the work of the Bar Foundation? In addition to it's the right thing to do, it helps people. It also helps us all because of the economic impact that we realize. You know, our providers work really hard, and look at this. I mean, 23,000 matters handled in 2018. You think about 23,000 members or matters rather, and a poverty population of 1.8 million. And you think about the slide that talked about only 1 out of 4 people receiving legal aid. What does that tell you? Well, it tells you that probably, if truth be told, and we could reach out to everyone who was in need of representation, we would be handling 3 to 4 times this many matters and touching the lives of maybe that many families or at least that many individuals. It's a powerful, powerful statement about the value of civil legal aid, particularly when you consider the different kinds of problems that our providers encounter. So the Bar Foundation is a flexible, forward-looking organization. We engage in a strategic planning process. The recent transition to a different way of life through COVID brought that home to the board, and we recently updated and validated the strategic plan we had developed just as recently as 2018. Part of the reason for doing that is I'm pleased to report we had achieved many of the objectives that we had set for ourselves back in 2018. So we have just completed this revalidation of our plan for the coming couple of years. We'll be rolling that out to everybody. So I would encourage you to be looking for it. It'll set forth some new objectives for us, consistent with the current environment and consistent with our mission. So one of the things we've all learned as a result of the COVID pandemic is that technology is changing our lives. Several years ago, the Bar Foundation Board was approached with an opportunity to provide funding for the development of some software that would enable the citizens who are of our community or simply looking for information and who may be able to handle a legal matter for themselves. And this is just a wonderful success story led by one of our past presidents, Mike Street. The Lagniappe Law Lab, through the auspices of Amanda Brown and her staff, have developed the Louisiana Civil Legal Navigator, which is a software program that will allow someone to access it from a library or from their home or the iPhone, and to have questions answered about their specific legal problem. So it's pretty interactive. This was just one way to, again, make access more readily available to some of the people who maybe were reluctant to go seek out a lawyer or who just had some questions they wanted answered. And so this is a better use of resources as opposed to committing lawyer time in a face-to-face meeting. Currently, and I would encourage you to go to this website and to just play with it a little bit. And you can see how interactive it is and how it answers questions in 4 legal situations, legal kinds of problems. And one of the beauties of it is that it also will tell a potential client that their problem is too complex perhaps for them to handle on their own. So rather than continuing to give or trying to give information about a very complex problem, it will simply tell the user, you need to go see a lawyer. But for many issues, divorce, child custody, landlord-tenant law, and employment wages kinds of cases, things that where you can identify more commonly asked questions and problems, this is a tremendous resource. We just rolled it out last month. We had a no kidding virtual rollout, and you're going to see and hear more about the Louisiana Civil Legal Navigator, particularly as we do demonstrations for partnership panel regions and for the judges and the justice community. So go to the website, check it out. If you're interested in helping, there's always a need here for subject matter experts, for test dummies. We need people to tell us what other kinds of legal problems are out there that we can perhaps address through the use of virtual means. All right, now I want to pause and share with you one more story. It's a story of a fellow named Robert Bunting who lives in Thibodeau with his family, and how he was helped by one of our providers.
My family means the most to me, but as far as what my home means to me is, you know, it's like it's our base of operations. I just started a new job. Unfortunately, I got an infection in my leg. Basically, that was part of my job in retail management, was to stand all day long. And I couldn't do that. I'd been paying on my mortgage for about 7.5 years. Always on time, always faithful. So I was trying to get ahead of the game and tell them, I'm going to miss a payment. I'm trying to be proactive, like they always say in all the credit commercials. They didn't want to talk. The sheriff came to my house with the papers and, served his papers at the house. That's how far it had gotten. And in the last kind of act of desperation, I just Googled in their free legal service. Crystal had the law pulled up on her computer screen there, and we were talking to the mortgage company on the phone, and she's telling them that this wasn't a choice for them whether to do it or not. It was required by law because of how the mortgage is handled through Fannie Mae. And she cited them, the chapter and passage of where it was, that they could look it up too. And she said, I'll send you a copy of it. I'll email it to you. There was this hand put over the phone on the mortgage company's end, the ruffling of papers and the muffled sound, and could we have a few more minutes? And, I knew then, I had someone in my corner now. After we had filed that second application, it came back approved. The one thing it did for me was to inspire me to do something on my own. So I shopped around. I was able to get insurance through a local company here in Thibodaux. Between what Crystal did for me and what the insurance did for me, it almost cut our mortgage payment in half. We can pay our other bills. We can start getting caught up on things now. I don't know where my family would be. I have a wife and 2 sons. We have no idea where we'd be today if it wasn't for Crystal keeping us in our home. My name is Robert Bunting. I have a wife named Karen, and I have 2 boys that went to high school and going to college here. We've lived in Thibodaux for about 8 years now. We don't want to move. We want to continue living here. My kids want to continue living here. It's a great town to live in.
You see here the work that Crystal did for the Bunting family changed their lives. And we see often that just that one little bit of help pushes, encourages, gets people to stand on their own 2 feet, encourages and inspires them to do for themselves. And but for that, who knows what might have happened to the Bunting family. And we thank Mr. Bunting for allowing us to share his story. So we've come to the end of the rainbow. I want to talk to you a little bit about what you can do and how you can help. First, if you're not a fellow of the Bar Foundation, I strongly encourage and hope that you will become one. The financial commitment is minimal, considering the benefits that you provide to not only those in need of our services, but also to become a member of what I think is a fairly distinguished network of lawyers practicing in the state. We engage in professional development activities. Every year we host a gala where we recognize the best of our profession. We always honor a distinguished jurist, a distinguished lawyer, a distinguished professor. And then we award the Caligaro Justice Award to someone whose actions have bettered, influenced the access to civil legal aid throughout the state. The gala is usually held in April. Well, you all kind of guessed what happened in April of 2020. We weren't able to do that. So in April of 2021, we're going to have a double gala, and we're going to recognize the honorees from this current year, as well as our 2021 honorees, who are Judge Guy Holdridge as our distinguished judge. Judge Holdridge is on the First Circuit Court of Appeal. Our distinguished attorney is Linda Clark, who is a past president of the Baton Rouge Bar Association and a longtime chair of the Capital Area Community Partnership Panel. Our distinguished professor is Professor Donald North, who had been instrumental at Southern University in starting up and sustaining their clinical practice. And then the Caliguero Justice Award winner this year will be Judge Rusty Knight from the 22nd Judicial District Court, for the work that he has done on reentry programs within that court and the impact that has had for similar courts around the state. So please, if you're not a Bar Foundation member, if you have associates and partners who are not a Bar Foundation member, I would encourage you and welcome you to join us. And if you know of anybody who's not a lawyer who wants to be a member or wants to join us, please let us know. We'll find a place for them. I hope that I have persuaded you that the Bar Foundation is a good thing for our profession. It's a visible organization. It provides legal services to many, many citizens of our state. It brings together lots of lawyers such as yourselves who have an interest in serving others in this way. And it improves our communities, and in so doing, it speaks very well of our profession. So those of you who are members or choose to be members, you're really making a personal commitment to fairness and access to justice by supporting the work of the foundation. And so I would encourage you to become a fellow if you are not yet one. And now time for poll number 3. And here's one other way you can help us. We have a 1-hour version of this program. So it's only 15 minutes longer than what I've talked to you about today. We have a 1-hour version of this program that we would be happy to export to you. If you know of a group that might be interested in hearing from you, let us know and we will send it to you. And we'll be happy to support this in any way that we can. This, it doesn't have to be a group of lawyers. Maybe preferably it's not a group of lawyers. Maybe another professional organization, church group, civic group, that would enjoy hearing about the work of the foundation, and particularly if they would be willing and interested in supporting it. If you need or have any questions about anything that I've talked about today, please don't hesitate to let me know. You may feel free to reach out to the staff. And as I mentioned, you've got Maggie and Dave and other members of your community who have been very active in the Bar Foundation for a number of years. So I've enjoyed very much being with you. I thank you again for joining us this morning to learn more about the Bar Foundation. And I hope you have a great week. And then I hope to see all of you at the gala in New Orleans in April. Have a great day.